resolution approving closure of Welch Avenue to facilitate the sewer repair at 203 Welch Avenue. Does council have any questions for staff on this item? If not, entertain a motion relative to the resolution.
Move the resolution.
Second.
All right, been moved and seconded. Roll call, please.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Aye.
Aye. Aye.
All right, thank you. All right, we're on to our additional budget review and hearing. So first up is community enrichment, and Keith.
All right. Welcome, Mayor and City Council members. Before we get started, just have a few introductions. Just a few staff members here. Obviously, there's a small portion of everybody that does the work, and we have 460 temporary staff in addition to our 25 full-time staff. But starting to your left, my right, we have Paul Tauke, who is our city forester, came on board this past year and has been a very good addition so far. And then we have Joshua Thompson, our Parks and Facilities Superintendent, and then Kelly Omlid, our Recreation Superintendent. So if you hit me with any questions that I can't answer, they're my backup. So just real quick, I just have a number of different things to kind of highlight for you. First picture, that you see is just our softball, one of our adult softball programs. But as a whole with the budget, we are looking at a 6.7% increase in general fund support. And I'm not going to go through a whole lot of numbers. One of the things is in regards to our temporary staff wages. We are finding it more and more difficult, and kind of highlighted that in the performance measures, but finding more and more difficult to compete. So we had to do something, and we have instituted a 3-step pay plan, and which will adjust yearly. But we look at, for this year, an increase of approximately $126,000 over last year's or the current year adopted budget. So that's a big thing, and that, you'll see that throughout the different pages. One of the things, obviously, with our budget and with the 6.7% to get it down to there, we did do some things with fees and charges. This has already been approved. The fees and charges is something that the Parks and Recreation Commission, does do. So they have approved this at their January meeting. But 60% of our activities are experiencing an increase. That is a little bit more than what we usually do. A lot of times we're right around that 35 to 40. We try to look at it, but it is a larger number. One of the other things is we do have punch cards to some of our facilities, and a lot of times it's you get 12 punches for the price of 10. So one of the things we're doing this year is we're proposing to go 12 punches for the price of 11. So just a little bit different. Ice arena rental rates, 3% increase. Furman Aquatic Center, just a few different things. Daily admission is going to go with a 50% or 50-cent increase, not 50%, 50-cent increase on daily admissions. Season passes, a 3% increases. Renewals and new passes still at 10%. And then one of the things we're doing too is we're eliminating the toddler passes, which was for 1 and 2 year olds. So what we're doing now is our youth will be for 1 year old up to 15, I believe it is, and then anything infants, anything below 1 are actually still free. So that's a change that we're making as well. And then with Homewood, greens fees 50 cents per round, and then season passes increase varies. Again, we're just trying to reduce some of the passes that we have, make it a little simpler for people. As far as department projects, we do have a number of things, citywide survey, which we're going to be doing, and Kelly is working on that, and really want to do it just focusing on parks and recreation programs, what we're seeing in the parks, just get as much information as we can. What do people want to see? We haven't done this before, so it's something that we want to do. In addition to that, the ADA inventory and transition plan, we're going to be putting that RFP out here and get somebody in to look at all of our parks and facilities and programming as well. Miracle Park, that's going well. And right now we're after a meeting in January, there's a little bit of fundraising to do yet, but right now we're anticipating that construction would start in June with that project, and then hopefully sometime this fall that would be completed. We are hosting fall workshop for our state association in September. So really hoping that project is pretty near complete by the time we host that workshop, because we'll have people from across the state, about 120, 125 people, other parks and recreation professionals. So we'll really be highlighting that project as well as other projects. And in the Healthy Life Center, just had the meeting last week. I won't spend a lot of time, but that obviously is something that continues to take a lot of staff time to move that project forward. To do all of our programs and the activities that we want, we do have some of our facilities, but we do rely on a lot of other facilities. You can see a picture of Green Hills, the pool up there on upper left, St. Cecilia School. We have Forker Gym in the middle. We have Ames Middle School, and then we've also been using Sports Iowa and doing some partnering and cooperative programs out there as well. So we continue to try to look at where can we use other facilities, and some of them, they are partnerships. We split some revenue of the programs that we run. In some cases, we get them for free. In some cases, most cases, we're paying some type of a fee for the use of that program. But volunteers, this past year, we had about 2,000 approximately hours of volunteer hours, about 1,000 hours on the park side and about 1,000 hours on the recreation side. Most of that is volunteer coaches that are participating. We kind of touched on partnerships. The last, the most recent one was this past week. It's kind of partnership with Jack's Outdoor Gear and Iowa DNR, who stocked the trout, and then we also Story County Conservation, and then us. And these are just some pictures. Ben Dodd sent us an email today, just thanking everybody, all the partners, and he did make a comment that this is the most well-attended community trout fishing event in Iowa. Is this past Saturday, and they're just always amazed at how many people, and you can see there's a number of kids, and that's really the one of the main points of this is getting the kids out there. And I do have to say that this little girl right here, this little girl, well. This isn't working, but anyways, this girl right here, it was cute. I had my son with me, and after he got done, he said, "Man, you should have got that on video." But her sister had just caught a trout, and she had her line in there, and the end of the pole went down. So she started trying to pull it up, and her mom's there and pulls the line out, gets the trout out of the water, and the trout goes off the hook. And because there were so many people around this area, there's probably about 8 inches of water, on the ice. And that trout just started swimming around all over, and everybody's trying to catch it. And she's just squealing away. And it was really cute. But, that's just one of the things. And this girl in the middle here with catching the trout, it's just fun to watch their excitement. And watch them and experience, that. And that's what the whole trout stocking program is about. So we're glad that we can partner with those entities and have, this type of event. The Friends of Ada Hayden, with this, we've been working on this for a while with them, and they said they would fund, signage. So right now, if you look on the left side, there's interpretive signs. We have 7 of them that have been installed. But Jim Pease really spent a lot of time with staff and working with Ben McConville in Public Works to really get all the information. And then they actually had them designed. They purchased them, the stands and everything, and then we installed them. And then the 2 maps, we have 2 of them up right now. We have a couple more that will going up. On one side of the map, in the middle, you can see is just a map of Ada Hayden, the lakes, and then you have points of interest and some other information. That's on one side of the sign. And then on the right is actually the back side of the sign and shows you 4 different routes, depending on where you're starting. And then what we did this past year also is we installed markers on the side of the trail, so you can see if you're doing the route. And those are in different colors, and they correspond to the routes on that map. So very thankful with Friends of Ada Hayden with what they have done. Friends of Roosevelt Park. They continue their summer Sunday concert series, but instrumental in pairing us up with an individual who donated funds to purchase 2 ping pong tables for the park. And then the neighborhood, they did secured a neighborhood grant to assist with the funding or the installations for the concrete and everything. And then we did the actual installation. So that's been very popular, and can't wait until the warmer weather and more people start using that facility. As far as programming and new things, so this was at Furman Aquatic Center, again the Whibbit, Aquatrack, and the Wiggle Bridge. And one of the things that was neat with this facility, and I may have mentioned this to you before, is once we started setting up, we brought it out on deck and started blowing them up and to get ready. We had a lot of kids start lining up before, half hour before it was even ready to go. In fact, there were so many kids and people that would line up for this. We actually had to bring out stanchions and institute some processes to keep the line a little bit more in check for doing it. So it's a great thing, and we are using this up at Municipal Pool as well in the wintertime. A couple other programs we do that are new: TRX Circuit, which is held here at the community center. Strong by Zumba. Picture on the left, we actually held some free classes in the gym just so people could try it out and get a feel, is this something that they want to do? And now the picture on the right is actually of one of the classes that we now hold in the aerobics room. And then the last one, West Coast Swing Dance. And these 4 pictures are just a sampling of the new stuff. We really challenge staff every year to try to look at, what are people wanting? What do we need to do differently? And again, this is just a sample of some of the things that we do. So from a scholarship standpoint, one of the things that Kelly had done is worked with Buffalo Wild Wings, and they have these teammate cards, and we've put this in our brochure and sent it out to all of our teams and all of our users. And what they can do is when they go there, if they show this card, 10% of their total sales will go to Parks and Recreation, and we've said that it would be donated to our scholarship fund. So we just started this past fall. We renewed it for this year. So if you ever go to Buffalo Wild Wings or anybody out there watching, all you got to do is take a picture of this card, put it on your phone, just show it to your server, and 10% will get donated to our scholarship. As far as just this past fiscal year, you can see over the last 5 years, anywhere from 33 to 16, 17, we had 99 number of registrations. And we go through MICA for that process to qualify people for scholarships. And this is one thing that the Parks and Recreation Commission has asked staff to review and come back with recommendations to enhance the program and maybe expand it as well. So that's something that we're looking at. In addition to that, and not a lot of people always know this, but for swim passes in the summertime for Furman and Municipal Pool, if you buy a pass, we do have scholarships available. And you can see in 2018, this is by calendar year, we had 96 number of passes for a total of $8,900, almost $9,000 that we absorb to provide these scholarships and get people out there being active in swimming, or in the one before this, the classes.
Keith, could you go back just for a second to the prior slide?
Yep.
So 79 registrations, $1,700. So I would love to see that number grow, because we know that there are kids in our community who would benefit from this. So I don't know how we get the word out, but $1,700, that's a paltry amount of money in the scheme of things. We would love to see more kids somehow taking advantage of this. So this is an unrecognized attribute of what you really brought to this and your staff. And so
right.
Thanks for doing this. We would love to see that number increase.
And that was a sentiment from the Parks and Recreation Commission as well. And that's what we're working on, right now. And Kelly's going to lead in that activity to do some of the research to come back to the commission and see what we could do differently. And with these scholarships right now for programs, it's youth. You know, we're talking like 6th grade elementary age, so like kindergarten through 6th grade. That's the only scholarships that we're providing right now. So that's why they want us to take a look at this, and could it be for, you know, kids younger than kindergarten? Could it be for older kids? Could it be part, you know, adults? So that's what we're looking at and seeing what the impact of those changes will be. So. And then if we transition to parks, you know, one thing's objective is to mow the turf areas every 7 to 10 days. And you can see 2016, we were at 12.5. The last 2 years, we've been at 8. And it's really Pat Wienia, who isn't here tonight, does a great job of, he revamped the routes. He really works with the staff, you know, keeps them on task. And that's why we've been able to do this. And people have noticed. We've heard comments, you know, hey, parks are better. We don't have the windrows, you know, out there, and you know, they're mowed, you know, much more in a consistent basis. So one of the things that we've been, you know, talking about for the last several years is no trimming in the parks. And if we don't have to trim, you know, that, you know, gives us staff time that we could do other things. So any of our new parks that we have been instituting, or if we've gone in and have done some renovations to parks, we're really trying to look at making it trim free. So right now we can tell you that 11 of our 36 parks, for the most part, are trim free. Now we say most part, there are in some cases some existing fences that, in new fences, what we do is we actually put a strip of concrete under the fence, and we do surface mounted fencing. So if something happens, we can replace it easily, but then we can just mow right over that edge. So in some cases we have existing fencing, and it's not prudent for us to, or feasible to go in there and try to do a strip of concrete underneath it. In some cases we have some right-of-way trees that we just can't get a mower between the tree and the curb, and we have to there also, you know, try to go in there and trim as well.
Can I ask, when you say trim free, you're just talking about small strips of lawn? Is that what you're talking about, or?
Yeah, no, what we try to do, so like at your house, if you have turf, if say you have a for example, a retaining wall,
yeah,
and you have turf right up to that retaining wall, you know, you can't always get with the mower all that grass that's going, so you have to come in there and trim it.
Okay, so it's just the trimming operation you're trying to minimize.
Yes,
okay.
yeah. So it's not reducing so like within this example right here, you can see the border around the playground and the sidewalk. Just make sure that that's all flush with the ground. We used to have timbers, and we still do in cases have timbers, but they're, you know, 3-4 inches up above the surface, and now we got to trim that because we can't you know, mow it. So that's what we're trying to do. So from a forestry standpoint, and these are some things that Paul has been working on, but on the park side of it is what he's done now is he's gone through and split all of our parks up into a 5-year rotation. And I've just shown you 2 years, but the goal is now is that what we will do in 2018-19, we'll go to all of these parks that are listed, we'll trim them, and we won't have to go back in there and trim them for another 5 years. So he's got all the parks split out into this. And again, I just gave you the 2 years. Outdoor ice rinks with this one, you know, down at South River Valley right now, and Iowa Wild and Wells Fargo donated the rink that you see on your left-hand side, and City Council allocated funding a couple of years ago to be the one on the right, which was great. So we put them down side by side, and our staff, all of our maintenance staff, did a wonderful job getting these things put up. We worked with water and electric. You can see in the right photo the phone pole or the light pole right there. We worked with electric to make that happen, and it's just been a great thing. It's very heavily used. A lot of people getting a lot of positive comments with it. Unfortunately, you know, we had to cancel the ribbon cutting because it was too warm, and then we had to cancel because it was too cold and things. But that's been a great addition. And one of the things that we're looking at too is trying to get a more permanent location for this. It's working out well, but we really like to do something so it's not in the floodplain. So that's something that we're going to continue to work on. with Car Park, a lot of these, signs, you saw them out at Ada Hayden. But this is Donna Carr. She's the daughter of Emmett and Alpha Carr. And Emmett and Alpha, actually with their own money, installed carpool back in 1926. So this was something that commission wanted to do to kind of recognize the Carr family. So we had conversation with Dennis Wendell and Historical Society and with Donna. And actually Donna, felt strongly about this as well. She donated all the funds, to pay for the materials for this. Didn't want to have a big to-do, but we did go out there when we installed the sign, and she was just very pleased, with it. So again, we'll be looking at doing some of those things as well. So with that, that's kind of the general fund, with Parks and Recreation. So I don't know if there's some specific questions before we move on to cemetery and right of way.
I have a couple. One is just 1 or 2 minutes. Just tell us what are you hoping the survey delivers to Parks and Rec? You're doing a citywide survey. So it's the first time you've done it.
Yep.
What is your desired outcome, or I mean, not necessarily the answers, but what do you want to tease out?
Yeah, what we want to really try to do is find out what are we doing well, and are there gaps in the services that we're offering or not offering, whether it's on the recreation side, whether it's on the park side. Are there amenities that people are looking for that we haven't put in? We sometimes hear, well, what about bocce ball courts? Or, could you do something like this? There's trail connections. And some of that, we got some information with the comprehensive plan open house yesterday, some good information. But that's what we're really trying to look at. And what do people want us to do? We do things. We do get a lot of feedback. We have, sometimes meetings, somebody comes with an idea, say, hey, yeah, let's sit down. Everything's a possibility is kind of our motto. And then we figure out, can we do it or can't we do it? And maybe this is the time, maybe it's not the time. And so that's what we're really trying to get as a feel. How well are we doing, and are there gaps in what we're providing and what the public wants?
I was surprised to see how many shared facilities that we have or we use. If the Healthy Life Center goes as envisioned, will that reduce that, and will that provide some financial or fiscal economies and also better benefits to our community in terms of having everything underneath one roof or one location?
Yes. Yeah, so especially with Green Hills and Forker, main program that we do there is aqua classes, and we would love to bring those aqua classes. Right now we have them in 4 different locations: Furman, Municipal Pool, Forker, and Green Hills. We'd love to bring those all under one roof and do that. That's just one of the things. With probably with Sports Iowa, they have a building and with the turf and everything that we don't have. So if we're going to continue doing something, we would still do that. Mm-hmm. As far as St. Cecilia, we do what we use that for is our youth basketball program. Mm-hmm. And that one we probably would continue because, we aren't charged for that. And, but generally who practices there are St. Cecilia kids. Mm-hmm. So it works well. So there is some of it that we would bring here, and then some that we wouldn't.
Now, safety. I think that we borrowed or someone loaned us a brush cutting piece of equipment to try and really grub out the trails. And I think that you were very complimentary in the fact that was either cheap or was free to try and help us in the aftermath of the tragedy that we had last year.
Correct.
What have you budgeted? I'm sorry, I didn't go through it line by line. Have you budgeted for equipment, or what are you thinking about in terms of trying to really get those trails clean back farther and better visibility?
Yeah, there were 2 pieces of equipment. One was a brush hog mower that goes on the front of a skid loader. And we did budget, that, and that is actually in the adjusted budget, right now. And the other piece
for this year right now.
Yep. Yeah, we had put it in requested, and then we moved it to adjusted. Mm-hmm. And then the other piece of equipment that we had was on our boom mower or arm mower. Mm-hmm. So there's is it rotary? rotary mower head that goes on the end. And what that does, it helps us like on the Vet Med Trail. When you're up top, you can get down on those slopes and things. So that's the other piece, and that's in the adjusted budget as well. So both of those pieces, after using them and seeing what they can do and help us, we put those in there so we can maintain that type of look and get to other parts of the parks and make sure that we continue creating safer environments for the users.
And then since Paul's here now,
Yep.
council talked about it last year, and it was brought to our attention by somebody, our constituents, about invasive species.
Yep.
In particular at Ada Hayden, and I presume that's in the mix, or you're dedicating time to that as well too.
Yep. So shortly after Paul came here, Paul, Joshua, and I met with Jim Pease and Irv Kloss in regards to invasive species. I know Paul has been working on developed a kind of a draft of what that group would work on, and has developed a list of individuals who could serve on that committee. So that's something that in the next month or two, he'll be getting that group together. And it's not just Ada Hayden, it's also other parts of the park. One of the park system, one of the things, Lori Biederman, who you've maybe met before, they did just actually, she hosted a meeting on February 2nd in regards to developing a Friends of Brookside Park group. And one of the things, they're still working through that aspect, but a couple of things that they want to do for this coming spring is to go into Brookside and take care of invasive species. The Community Academy is going to be doing some things at Brookside this summer, and one of their tasks that they want to accomplish is getting rid of some of the invasive species. So one of the things that we talked about too in that meeting is not just the plant species, but are there some invasive wildlife that we need to be concerned about, also. But Paul's going to be leading that activity, and like I say, getting that started in the next few months.
It's such a major undertaking. I know Emma McCarthy-Lee it's a huge problem there. And so I love the friends groups, but I want to be sensitive too. And it's just a tremendous labor of love. I mean, entire Saturdays out clearing these. And so, let us know as time goes on, is this working? So I want to appreciate them, but I don't want to over appreciate them.
Right.
So the balance there.
Oh yeah. Yeah. We hear you, and it's one of those things that's going to be an ongoing thing. You just can't go in there, take it out, and say it's gone forever and ever. That's just not the case. So
great.
Yeah. So anything else from the general fund?
Parks? All right.
So we'll move on to cemetery, which is page 182. Again, signage, historical signage, working with Sharon Worth and Joe Newman, who's our principal clerk out at the cemetery. He's working with Sharon and with the Ames Historical Society, and we're going to be putting some signage out there too to highlight some of the unique things that are happening in history of the cemetery. Monument restoration. This is something that we're seeing a little bit more. We've got some old monuments in the cemetery that are leaning, that are sunken. And what we did is this year we do have an extra $5,000 in the budget to start doing some monument restoration. But one of the things also is what probably the first thing that we're going to do is to try to do an inventory of the monuments and see how much of a problem and how much of an issue it is. So that'll be the first thing that we do. And then the water spigot, you can see the picture on the right. What used to be is there used to just be a pole sticking out of the ground with a spigot on the end of it. And one of our staff, Pat Griffin, gave him this task, and he went out, got all the materials, and he did this to all of our water spigots within the cemetery. So they look much more presentable than what they used to. So just to give kudos to Paul, or to Pat. So that's really with the cemetery. Not a lot, but there's no questions. We'll move on to right away. So you're back to page 120. Remember last year the council allocated $75,000 to address the hazardous trees that we had found within the inventory. it was like 75 trees. Those are all have been taken down and so on. And now our goal is to really keep that hazardous tree list to probably between 0 and 5. We'd like to keep it always at 0. We don't want it to get up to 75. If a hazardous tree is there, we want to take it down as quickly as possible. So that's our goal with the hazardous trees. And then pruning new and old, and then planting new trees with the Ames Foundation. Since 2014, they have planted 787 trees, since 2014, in the park system, in the right of way. And we have had another, with an Iowa DNR grant, another 15 trees. So again, 787 trees, with the Ames Foundation. So one of the things that Paul has been working on, and this is just a tree zone, you can't see it real well, but the city is split into 29 zones right now. And I think what Paul has talked about is maybe splitting one of the zones into 2 and creating 30. But really what he wants to do, again, go after each of these zones. So if we can do 6 of these zones every year on the right-of-way trees, we can, again, get to every tree once every 5 years. So just for example, this year, this is what Paul and our maintenance staff have been working on. So you can see, it's a total of almost 3,000 trees, with everything that's been done. So that's, again, we'll work on continuing to work on that. And just in regards to tree locations that Parks and Recreation is now responsible for, you can see in the right of way about 71% or almost 11,000 trees. In the parks, just under 4,000, 25% of total trees that we're responsible for. And then the cemetery has about 4%, about 650 trees. So that kind of gives you a breakdown of where the trees are that we're responsible for. In regards to the EAB response plan, with it, on that first column in the beginning, this is when the response and management plan was put together. You can see in the inventory the number of trees for a total of just over 2,300 trees that were out there. Thus far, in the park system, we've removed 516 trees, and there's only 47 remaining. In the right-of-way, 1,084 trees, 708 remain. So we have about 755 ash trees, that remain with it. Now we're getting to the point where most of these trees, especially in the right-of-way, will need to be contracted out. The first 5 years, we really spent a lot of time going after, the smaller trees. And then there were some trees that we thought may have to contract, but we were able to take as well, with it. One of maybe just a little bit of an interesting fact, in the response plan, when that was put together, we had estimated that years 1 through 5, just from a contracted standpoint, would cost the city about just over $1 million. With what we're estimating for year 5 of the plan, which is the current year that we're in, our actual expenditures for those first 5 years will just be under $500,000. So it was really beneficial with the bid process, and Joshua and Paul, oversee that. But we've been getting some really, good prices. So in the right of way, we do plant 1 for 1. So if we take down 1,084 trees, we work with Country Landscapes has had the contract for, I think, most of it, if not all the years. We plant 1 for 1 back into the system. And then we work with Ames Foundation. In the park system, I can't say that we've actually planted another 516 trees in the park system, but we, like I said earlier, we have over 800 trees that have been done through grants and the Ames Foundation. So that's where we're at with the EAB. And if you look at it just from a standpoint, how many ash trees, this kind of breaks it down. 70% of them are still in the right of way. And then we have parks and cemetery. Electric on private property does have, some trees that were inventoried when we did the EAB plan. And then the privately managed, those are generally out with ISU. So if you look along Airport Road and with Research Park, they were inventoried, but there's actually a responsibility of ISU, and there's a an agreement with that they would take care of some of those trees. Now, we're closing in on the end of year 5, and when we did the original plan, the goal was also to review the plan after 5 years, which Paul is already starting to work on. So when that is done, we'll bring that back before council and give you an update and any recommendations that we feel are necessary, to the plan.
Keith, just to clarify for us and also for maybe anybody who's watching who heard you talking about the EAB plan.
Yep.
The 1-for-1 replacement policy is not one tree in the same location where one was removed. It's one going back into the system at an appropriate location.
Correct. Because some of the trees that are coming out, they may be visibility hazards. It made the area where it was planted originally just isn't, wide enough or big enough, just not a good location. So you are correct, Gloria. It's 1-for-1, but it may be in a different location.
And on another tree note, do we have any plans to include trees in the Ames on the Go app so that citizens who see a problem tree can report that?
Actually, it already is.
Is it?
Yep.
That's great.
And I think the trees are already there. Paul's already been getting information, feedback from the residents. And Joshua just spoke with Public Works just in the last couple weeks to get other parks and recreation items on that app as well. So that'll be coming in shortly.
Okay, any more questions for Keith?
Okay. Then just have one more slide. And, we talk about efficiency and so on. This is one thing. Again, Pat Wienia, our turf maintenance supervisor, he looked at, we needed to replace some mowers. He looked at what we had, said, if we replace a 51-inch mower with a 72-inch mower, we can, be more efficient. And that's what he did. And you can see that just the time mowing medians in the city, we went from 5 days down to 4 days, which again, frees up staff to do other things. So just wanted to share that as well.
All right.
So didn't quite make 15 minutes.
Didn't quite make a half an hour.
That's our fault. We asked you lots of questions.
Any other questions?
All right.
All right.
Thanks for all you guys do. And it's really it's really important in our community. And you guys are really key to making, the quality of life. So thank you for what you do. And I think the questions are trying to make sure that we're continuing to do that, not questioning what you're doing, but just thanks for the service you guys provide. So,
All right.
All right. Thank you.
Have a good night.
Yep. All right. On the general government programs, it's like Kelly.
I want to hear like Micro Machine Guy. Super fast.
He knows.
Is he running yours?
I want to hear Travis.
No, it's tomorrow night.
It's only like two left. Oh, maybe that could be. Maybe the second one's still there.
That would be nice.
They need a lot.
I know.
Ready to go?
Yeah.
Wait a minute. Start the clock running.
What's not allowance?
It's up to the mayor.
All right, good evening, City Council. Tonight we have Planning and Housing Department on Wednesday, which is unique. We're usually a Thursday presentation, but we're helping out Ames Electric tonight. This is our overview of the planning services. We have really two divisions of current planning and long-range planning. And we have an administrative services division that we share with Public Works and Fire. So they're part of our presentation tonight. But we did that. We created that division about 3 or 4 years ago to kind of to work. We have a lot of cross training that is necessary to meet a lot of our similar customer needs, and that's been working out fairly well in trying to help us meet our administrative needs. We serve 3 boards. As you know, we deal with the Planning and Zoning Commission twice a month, the Zoning Board of Adjustments once or twice a month, and we have the Historic Preservation Commission once a month. Those are our 3 primary boards. This is a graph that I've made a while ago to help explain kind of what do we do. We do a lot of things in a lot of different ways. Most of it's about customer service. We're here a lot to serve you specifically on Tuesday nights, but really during the day, we're dealing with a lot of different customers, whether it's just general citizens or whether it's a developer or whether it's another department that we can assist with different items. This is a good example of how we spend our time throughout the year. So talking about the planning for the past year, it's a little bit different this last year. The first 4 years that I was here, we were in quite an upswing of growth, and a lot of it was in response to the apartment construction and just general kind of economic growth that was happening in a lot of places. I think we saw that crest last year, especially in the apartment market, and we've noted that some of our departments' applications are down a little bit in the past year, which doesn't mean the sky is falling. It means we're going back to normal, instead of setting new records for the amount of applications that are coming in for 3 years in a row. So we're down about 15% overall when you kind of look at it in totality of the different things that we touch. And like I said, it's a much more balanced set of reviews that we're doing. It's not atypical. One sector of an economy kind of shifts and then another one shifts the other direction. So we've seen a little bit more on the retail and commercial side, but definitely a lot less on the apartment side. And that's why you see these differences in our applications. So our projections are still the same in terms of the average, and that's probably more where we'll be instead of exceeding the average as we have been. And as I mentioned in the earlier on, the apartments are really the one that's a lot different, and it takes about anywhere from 12 to 18 months to deliver an apartment project. So a lot of things were approved a year and a half ago, and they were all kind of completed mostly this last summer. So you saw a peak in delivery of housing, even though you might have felt the market was soft. Well, those things started so long ago, they were being completed. And I think we'll see that kind of temper here in the next 2 years as the market kind of rebalances to what we know is available and what people are demanding. And we have seen a lot of retail kind of development, a lot of inquiries in the last year. So I think that's one of those sectors that is really kind of still thriving and bumping up for us. The John Deere building in the research park is pretty significant. The Menards construction, different South Duff retail. Those are just different establishments that are continuing to come into the city. In terms of housing development, it was kind of an unusual year in terms of single family. If you track the single family building permits, it was a little bit lower in closer to 100 permits that were issued last year. That's not exactly our department, but the annexation of land and the subdivision is what leads to those homes. There's not always a direct correlation though, just because of the amount of time it takes to get land prepared to actually have a house constructed. So what we saw was actually a platting of a lot of lots, but not a lot of homes following once they were platted. So even though we had over 200 lots created last year, which was more than the normal average, we think that was kind of a blip of just the convenience of how to construct out the phases of those additions. And we expect a little bit slower pace of those lots coming in. One of the more significant things, though, is what this diagram is showing you is what's really kind of out there next for residential development. And I think you're well aware of this. You have initiated the annexation in North Ames at GW Carver and Cameron School Road. And then, as you're well aware, there's potentially 3 different annexations in South Ames. And whether those all come to fruition or not, those are things that you're going to be seeing in 2019 and making decisions on how to proceed with those requests. And in all total, we had the annexations on that graph are well over 500 acres of land, which is very substantial if they were all to occur in the next year and a half for the city. So for long range planning, we had some significant projects that got finished. They felt like it took a long time to do some of these, but the corridor plan, the downtown gateway zoning, and the occupancy standards were the 3 that kind of stand out for the last year. I think you could probably look at an agenda and find one of those 3 things on every agenda from the last year. The other thing that was a little unique was because of these more in-depth projects, the referrals And the requests for information back and forth were a little bit higher than average too, because there was just more information necessary, more people participating. And I think that just generated more interest by the city council and asking for more information in meetings to cover those issues. The other thing that you have in your council goals is related downtown and campus town, and we supported you for workshops there and have other direction to follow up on those in the upcoming year. And again, I think we're continuing through on the same theme. A lot of issues were left unresolved in terms of long-range planning. We're coming back to downtown and campus town again this spring to revisit those unresolved issues about development, parking, and plazas. We have the downtown gateway area that we've been talking about for well over a year in terms of actual development projects there that we're still in conversations with. And then obviously our new priority is the Ames Plan 2040, which we kicked off. We had a meeting with you in December, but the public kickoff was yesterday. So that will be our department priority, and that will be a very large time-consuming effort for the whole city. It's not just us. We have a lot of people helping to support us on this project. So that's the conclusion on planning. If you have more questions about the priorities or the future projects or anything that we've seen in the last year, I'm happy to answer that.
Questions for Kelly? Okay.
Okay. So Administrative Services, as I mentioned, is an internal support group. In this case, there isn't a whole lot to report out. They're fitting in their role very well, and they provide support to not just the planning boards and commissions, but to all of the building inspections boards, as well as public works meetings as well. Any specific questions about their customer service, I'm happy to answer those either as well. Okay, and then we're going to move on to housing.
All right. Hello, everyone.
Hey, Vanessa.
How y'all doing? Happy New Year. That's how long it's been since I've seen everybody. Anyway, glad to talk about our citywide community development block grant and home programs starting on page 190. And again, we administer this program based on addressing the needs of housing in our community and investing in ways to increase affordable housing and ways to explore availability of all housing types. Next. So our first program is our citywide program. And under this program, we incur expenses that are not eligible to be spent under our CDBG or home programs. And we also support payroll costs for our temporary staff in support of those programs. And we continue to host various types of training events, education, educating the public on various housing topics or awareness issues that come up. The one big one we did last year, you participated in with our 50th anniversary of the Fair Housing. And so that was, again, an effort to educate and have the community come out and support that important event. And so those are the types of housing issues we want to make the community aware of how important that is. So that's one of the biggest activities that we do under that. But again, the biggest role under that is supporting the cost and staff that cannot be covered under our grant programs. So we have any questions about the citywide program?
Vanessa, it looks like we've seen a real explosion in the number of attendees at our events, from 30 in 1617, 275 in 1920. Is that because we had these special events like the Fair Housing anniversary? And
yes, and we also I've been working with a lot of the area human services, doing various types of training and lunch and learns and things of that nature. So really, it's been a big push and effort on that part to do that.
Great job.
Great, thank you. Any other questions about citywide? Okay, onto our community development block grant program. So our budget for 18-19 is approximately $1,170,765. And we have just received our 15th allocation of CDBG funds in the amount of $572,094. And this includes just over $595,000 of rollover funds from 17-18, and also includes about $3,100 of anticipated program income. So that makes up that total $1 million. And from there, next. Thank you. We are going to be using those funds again to support the council's goals of addressing affordable housing in the community. And out of that $500,000, we use about 20% of that for our allocation for administrative expenses. That's the maximum that you can utilize under the CDBG program. So for 18-19, we have been incurring following activities have occurred or will be occurring. As you know, a lot of you were able to participate in the ribbon cutting when we completed the Trips Deed extension through 321 State Avenue. So that was a major accomplishment that we have been, we're glad to have gotten that phase through. And so our next part of that is discussion and approval of the plans for what we call a phase 2, that we're hoping to have that discussion with you later on this month to talk about what our next steps are. Now that we have become the developer on the property, we'll kind of try to phase it in and get the next steps and get your input on how we should proceed on that next step and what that looks like. So excited to talk to you about that at the end of the month. Also this year, it's a big year. It's our 5-year consolidated plan and fair housing impediment study. So we're going to be updating that. I've now gotten 2 additional staff people to help with that, updating that plan. One is we have a contract with Iowa State, and the other one we hired another temporary part-time person that's going to help us with the public forums, and Iowa State's going to help us with the data gathering so that we can meet the timeline that HUD has set out to get that plan done. So it's good to have some additional help on that with all the other things that we're working on. We also continue to administer our deposit and transportation assistance programs. That's where we help with security deposit and first month's rent. And we help with transportation like SkyRide bus tickets, HERDA bus tickets, or gas vouchers. It's a very popular program. This year, we spent a lot more money on deposit applications. Last year, we spent a lot more on transportation. So it seems to just change a little bit from year to year based on the needs of the community. And I work with a lot of the nonprofits to try to make sure that our program is assisting the gap that they cannot fund and not necessarily overlap. It's important that we try to stretch the dollars. And so rather than everybody paying a little bit here, there, when they have big needs to fill, they usually will refer them over to our program, and for a little emergency things that they can take care of. That way they're saving their budget and we're able to spend money on our budget. So we try to coordinate and collaborate under those particular programs.
What page is that on? The last bullet, the deposit and transportation assistant program, is that on page 192?
193.
Is that on our CDBG?
Yes, sir. As you see the chart.
I was just curious which, I wasn't aware, I must have missed it last year. I didn't realize we had something like that.
That we had this program?
Yeah.
We've been doing this program since 2004 when we became an entitlement. We've kind of we decreased some of the services. We were doing utility assistance and childcare assistance. But again, working with the other area nonprofits, it felt like the biggest cost was deposit and transportation. So that's why we focus our programming on that.
And people just apply through your office then to get that?
Yes. Applications are available online and they're available in front of our office.
Okay, thank you.
It's here, that's the rental.
Mm-hmm.
It's all on 192, it's all under.
It's on 192 and 193.
So rental affordability program,
Okay.
it's included in that program.
That also include the transportation assistant program, the same thing?
Yes. It's called renter affordability because it targets people who rent to help them with deposit and transportation.
So nothing is shown budgeted this year for that. Is that true? So it just shows your recommendation is nothing.
Well, for 1920, we don't know what our allocation is going to be.
Oh, I
So we anticipate that we're going to receive the same amount, but
Gotcha.
we don't necessarily put a budget in place.
So we go ahead and then we amend our budget.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Just as a reminder that one of those parts of that budgeting is that you do the annual action plan and you set the budget for the next year, typically in May. So you'll see which programs you're funding with that allocation at that point in time. We typically don't project what you will choose to fund at a later date in this budget.
So the 457 will be spread then based on your decision in May.
I'm sorry, Steve, what?
See for next year, 1920,
Uh-huh.
you'll make a decision how to spread. Right now, it just says future allocation. We're anticipating next year 457,000.
Gotcha.
We'll wait till you give us direction in May to actually adopt for that year.
And we also can't submit that plan until we know exactly what our allocation is.
Yep.
So that's why it's just a projection at this point in the budget.
Thank you.
Just like on this slide, we're talking about our 1920 allocation has not yet been announced by HUD. So for budgeting purposes, we use the FY 2018-19 amount of 572, but that's just a future projection, and we don't put dollars in until we actually know what we're going to be receiving. And we will be bringing those action plan projects to you with a recommendation of how they should be spent or allocated. Okay, also, again, this is part of the action plan. We conducted our first public forum with your participation back in December, and we had a great participation from the public. And so now with the additional help, we anticipate having more public forums for feedback to bring back to you when it's time to do the final review of both our consolidated plan and our action plan. Those plans are required to be submitted to HUD before May 17th. However, with all of the things that have been going on with the furloughs and things like that, I don't anticipate that we're going to make the May 17th date. So I will be coming to you to ask for an extension to HUD to the final date of on or before August 15th. So just, yeah, we're not going to make this date. So. All right, our newest HOPE program is called a Home Investment Partnership Program, activities that start on page 195. And for the first time this year, we were eligible to receive home funds in the amount of $750,000, which includes $75,000 for administrative funds, which is a little different from CDBG can go up to 20%. Under home, you can only do 15%. And then you have to set aside 15% of that for any community housing development organizations, and they're called CHODO set-aside funds. We currently don't have any eligible CHODO organizations in our community. That's something that they would have to make an application for to see if they would qualify for a CHODO. Also, we could take time to try to do some type of assistance to help people become organizations, see if they qualify for CHODO, but home funds, you have to set that side amount. If you don't create a CHODO, those funds stay at HUD. We never draw those down because we can't spend it unless it goes directly to a CHODO. And then the remaining is about $562,000 would be used to do actual programming.
Vanessa, does the CHODO have to be in Ames, or can it be a Story County CHODO?
I don't think they have to be in Ames. They have to be a nonprofit organization that the projects have to occur within the city limits of Ames, and they have to meet that criteria. I don't think it's limited to they have to be in Ames. The work just have to occur here. The unique thing about the home program, it requires a 25% local match. And our local match based on that $750,000 is just over $187,000. Fortunately for us, we had already set aside $250,000 of general obligation bonds to go towards the 321 State Improvement Project. And that can be used for the local match contribution for the first 2 years or so. The spend down of the local match is different. It's based on how much you spend per time. So it's not, you have to spend it and then determine how much that goes towards match. So it doesn't count until you spend on a project. So, so we have enough based on 187 versus 250 that depending on how you spend it, it could last even more than 2 years.
So if we don't have a CHODO approved agency and we can't draw that down, then we don't have to get the 25% match on that 112,000. Is that correct?
The 25% match is always based on the 750.
Even if you don't have, even if you can't draw down the 112 for CHODO?
Correct.
Okay.
It's only what you spend though, right? If you don't spend the 750.
No, he was talking about the CHODO.
Yeah, if we let's just say we don't have a CHODO here as approved, and you can't draw those funds down, then our match, our 25% match would go down, wouldn't it?
We wouldn't be
Doesn't
spending,
change.
we wouldn't be spending it for the CHODO.
No, but it doesn't change. The 25% match is based on the allocation,
Okay.
regardless of whether or not you have a CHODO or not.
Okay.
If you don't spend money on CHODO, the match is still based on your initial allocation,
Okay.
not minus your CHODO, not minus your admin fees. It's the allocation itself.
Okay.
Get it? They got it.
Good.
Right? Okay, good. Next. Okay, so we're just really getting the understanding of how home funds can be used, and they can be used for a variety of housing activities, and they can be used for tenant-based rental assistance. They can be used for housing rehab, assistance to home buyers, and it also can be used for new construction, which is totally different from CDBG. CDBG is basically infrastructure, and they allow 15% of your money to be used for public service. But on the home program, you can actually use it for new construction. And that's why the timing of receiving home with doing the 321 state worked out perfectly, because now we have money doing the infrastructure side, and now with the home funds, we'll have money to actually construct housing. So that's the good part about receiving home funds without knowing about it, but that's the bonus that comes with it. You can also use it for site acquisition, site improvements, demolition, relocation, and reasonable activities related to the development of non-luxury housing. And home funds can be utilized to support the city council's goals of addressing affordable housing in the community as well. So now we have two sources of federal dollars that can be utilized to continue the goals that the council has set out. I can tell you right now that I'm still a little concerned about home, because our CDBG funds have showed up in the system, but home is still not there yet. I did talk to HUD the other day, now that they're back at work for a little while, just saying, you know, what's the status of our home funds? If we wanted to start spending them soon, they're not there to draw down. So just trying to work out where the money is. So it's been approved, but it doesn't show up in our system. So that's a little concerning. Any questions about home CDBG? You all good? We can quiz you now. What's the local match for home?
25%.
God, that took a while.
I thought
I
you
was
meant
waiting for
dollar
someone
amount.
else to volunteer.
Dollar
What's the
amount?
local match for CDBG?
What's that?
What's the local match for
There
CDBG?
isn't one.
That's right.
Good
Good
question.
job.
Oh, wait a
What's the
minute.
what's the admin percent for home?
15%.
No.
It's stumped the council night.
10. I'm guessing 10.
You ready?
Okay, I'm ready.
All right.
Oh, okay. Yeah, as you know, every year we also want to thank our staff that helps us do what we do. And so this year we're talking, it was 10 years of good planning and great fun, but now we're missing one. As you know, Charlie Kuster, who had been a planner in our office over 10 years, retired back in December. And so we're down a staff person in the planning side. And so staff is missing that, but next. Next, Kelly.
Sorry.
But there's still a team with their thumbs up. Planning the future is their dream. And so we really want to thank Justin Moore, Eloise Solostrom, Julie Gould, and Ray Anderson, and our future planner that's going to be coming. We've already started the process of recruitment, but they're moving on and moving forward to continue to do work for both the council and the community. And we just like to, again, give them a big thanks for all that they do for helping us do our jobs for you. That's what I have, Kelly.
Thank you. All right. Any other questions for planning and housing?
All I can say is I was dumbfounded to see that we doubled the referrals to you last year. I think it was 19 or 17 to
Yeah, we
38.
actually went back with Tashik to make sure I wasn't counting differently. And
So anyway, just as we move forward,
so those are,
as you reflect on that, that's an awful lot to throw
So
on.
those are
especially if
the-
you're down one planner. Isn't Ray out right now on medical leave too?
raised out until the end of March. Yeah.
So they're actually down 2 planners right now. So as we move forward, so. Hey. Well, I guess we'll probably be seeing you very soon.
Maybe next Tuesday.
Maybe next year. All right. Thanks for all you do.
Thank you, guys.
Thank
for
you,
your time.
Vanessa. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Vanessa. Please. Say it. You're gonna sing it. What do you see?
A new face this year.
Got a bunch of new people this year. So.
Yeah.
Good evening, council, Mr. Mayor, and on behalf of all the members of the Ames Fire Department, thank you for allowing us this opportunity to come up and share with you our 2019-2020 budget. Tonight, I brought along with me our building official, Sarah Van Meteren, and our 2 newest deputy fire chiefs, Doug Allen and Tom Hackett. So, made it official back in January, so we're getting there.
Congratulations.
As you can see from our organizational chart, we're spread out between 2 major functions, fire safety and building safety. We currently have 2 shift commander openings because we were able to do some promotions. And we're actively working to fill those, as well as a plan examiner position over on the building side. Fire department's broken down into 4 major programs: administration and support, suppression, emergency action, prevention and safety education, and also building safety. The page numbers you'll see there in green that we'll be covering tonight. So if you need to refer to a specific program, the page numbers are there. Overall, on the fire safety side of the budget, we are recommending a 3.9% increase. This increase also includes the cost of adding 1 additional firefighter to our suppression and emergency response program, which will increase our overall staffing numbers, our FTEs, to 59.75. Also want to recognize Iowa State University and their 25% commitment to our operating budget, which is nearly $1.9 million for next year. This mutually beneficial relationship between our 2 organizations has provided multiple teaming opportunities throughout the years, from grant opportunities for ISU professors and programs to standard emergency responses to hazardous materials emergencies. Ames Fire and Iowa State University are continue to find ways to improve the safety for students, visitors, faculty, and staff. The picture you see in the background was 1 year ago yesterday. That was the I-35 pileup that we had back on February 5th. That was between 13th Street and Highway 30 on 35 southbound. That was, the Des Moines Register actually called that one of Iowa's most breathtaking crashes. Unfortunately, we did have 1 fatality and a handful of injuries. But for me, this picture is just a great example of a multidiscipline, multi-jurisdictional, multi-unit response, and how well agencies in Story County were able to come together, working with law enforcement, medical, fire, the DOT. It was just a great showcase of how well we work together to serve our customers. And we actually have one of the incident commanders is sitting behind me. Tom Hackett was on that call, and he was out there. We actually had crews on the north side and the south side working their way through all the vehicles to get to the injured patients. So we had it set up on the north side and southbound, tunneling in to get to everybody. The picture you see down the right-hand corner is just from a couple weeks ago. That was once again on Interstate 35. I may have saw it on the news. That was just south of Highway 30. And that was a trailer that was full of feed supplement and rubber boots. So if there's a shortage of rubber boots, we know why at least.
You mean rubber boots for people?
Yes,
Oh.
yes.
They go up fast, I bet, rubber boots.
Yeah, it was, you could see the smoke for a while. Yeah. There wasn't much of that trailer. The picture we have there's another picture on the other side that was just completely destroyed from the fire. Luckily, the tractor unhooked and pulled ahead, so it didn't involve any diesel fuel or any type of hazardous leaks that way.
Yeah.
This is a series of photos from a structure fire over on Gaskill Drive that started with a vehicle fire and spread into the garage. I included this series of photos to help illustrate the importance of great building codes and a quick fire response. Great building codes and inspectors make sure garages are drywalled, and to make sure that they're drywalled appropriately to prevent fires from spreading into the homes. Likewise, a quick fire response and attack on the fire prevents the fires from spreading into the house and endangering the occupants. Both of these efforts combined kept the fire loss to only $10,000, and that includes $5,000 for the vehicle instead of a $255,000 loss. So great building codes with inspectors and a quick response kept that fire from being much bigger than what it was. We were able to get knocked down really quick. Moving on to our fire administration and support on pages 42 and 43. Overall, we're looking at a 0.8, that's 0.8% increase in that program. In April of 2018, you may remember the fire chief's position was vacated and a new fire chief was announced in September, hence the new faces up here. And that also left 2 openings then in our deputy fire chief ranks. Both those positions were filled in January with the 2 gentlemen you see behind me. We are currently putting together a promotional process for the 2 openings we have for shift commander, and we hope to have those filled as soon as possible. With new people in these positions, officer development is going to be key. So such as leadership training and also command and control, which is why we've increased our contractual budget to account for this additional training and development needs. In October of last year, we transitioned over to new medical reporting software. This change was actually mandated by the state in order to meet national requirements, which had an impact on our contractual budget as well to get the new software. And some more exciting news, we've begun actually preparations for our first ever training site for police and fire, which I'm happy to share with you tonight. Tonight's kind of the first time we're talking about it publicly. And we're still on pages 42 and 43. Working with our public works department, we're able to secure some ground to start building a training site. And this is located out at the intersection of Pullman Street and Carnegie Avenue, which is over by the warehouse, the First Fleet and Public Works out there. That's kind of by their salt dome. There's a corner over there. By using low-cost shipping containers, we're able to construct different training props like the one you see here. They actually use 7 different shipping containers, and we're able to build this prop. We'll be able to keep our costs extremely low, and we can speed up or slow down the development of the site depending on the economy and how well things are going within our budget. So at any point we can stop and we're not out anything. And if the economy is doing well and our budget allows us, we'll get a couple shipping containers. Law enforcement is committed to that program as well. And we'll continue to develop this small little city that will allow us to use different training props. And at any point in time, if Public Works decides they need that ground for something else, we can move the shipping containers and put them somewhere else. So it's a great low cost approach. And over the next 5 to 10 years, we'll have thousands of dollars invested instead of millions using this cost saving approach. This is the first time in our department's history, and I believe the city's history, that we are looking to start a training site, which is really exciting. And to be able to team up with our law enforcement partners is even more exciting to know that I'll serve dual purpose for our city.
Is that going to be used just by AFD?
Our goal is to be a partner for the other Story County fire agencies and bring them in and do host trainings throughout the year as well. Moving over to our fire suppression and emergency action, pages 44 and 45. Two major items affecting next year's budget is the addition of the one firefighter and then also a slight decrease in our retirement budget, which is our retirement system, sorry. The picture that you see in the background is a nighttime training evolution with our crews. It's a vehicle that's on its side in a ravine. We try to make it as difficult as possible for them to get to a patient. And so crews actually had to tunnel in through the car to get to the patient to pull them out successfully, all doing it with low light visibility. And so it was a great training opportunity. We try to do at least one of those, if not two of those a year, because a lot of accidents happen at night and you got to be able to get your lighting around and work in low light conditions. So that was a good training exercise for our crews. The picture in the right-hand corner, that's from Brookside Park, the restroom fire that we had last year, which caused over $50,000 worth of damages. For me, this slide is a great reminder that we're so much more than just a fire department for our community. We are problem solvers. When people call 911, we want to be able to show up and solve whatever problem they have. And so we have to train and make sure that we're ready to answer everyone's 911 call. The picture on the left is our firefighters making entry into a confined space prop that we have. Simulating, it goes down and makes a 90-degree tunnel. And so they have a 90-degree turn. They have to get down there, position themselves, pull a victim out, get them into a harness and raise them up through that same hole that they made entry in. And we do that all while on air. So you're limited on your visibility and how long you can be down into that confined space. The middle picture is ice rescue. We haven't been on the ice just yet. We have to cut holes right now. It's a little too thick for us to be out there, but you'll see over the next couple of weeks, crews out training on ice rescue. We did it last year, a little too late. Ice was kind of already coming out, but that's a good time for us to get out when people might journey out on thin ice to do training. We have a Fortuna boat there, and that's a great tool that we can use to get people in and out of the water very quickly. It deploys fast. And then in the upper right-hand story, that's a great story for us. It was about a year ago. They got called to a woman in labor, got on scene, and a baby was breech. And they were actually able to deliver that baby successfully and were able to get the mother to the hospital to deliver the second twin. So we're happy to be a part of that. So every once in a while we get to help bring life into this world, which is a great joy. And as a lot of us are parents ourselves, it's always fun to be a part of that. So a great story to share. Continuing with fire suppression and emergency action, the photo you see here is from one of our handful of hazardous materials responses we had to the ISU campus last year. This one was on March 8th over at the Durham Center. Someone discovered some white powder you can see in the right-hand corner there on top of their laptop after they left for lunch and came back. Noticed the white powder on there. Our crew suited up and made entry. There was no credible threats with this for this specific incident, but we still had to treat the substance as hazardous until we could determine otherwise. So you can see our crew suited up. The device we have up there in the picture in the middle is a True Defender, and that's a chemical analyzer. And so we're able to go in there and get a sample of that white powder and determine that it was non-life-threatening. It was actually just an amino acid that somebody was messing with and somehow spilled it on the laptop. I think it's just a good reminder there's so much more that we do than just, I think people call us a fire department, but we do a lot of other activities for our community, just trying to help solve problems. In our fire suppression and emergency action program, we're also working hard to make sure others know how to save lives by teaching them basic first aid and CPR. We understand that we can't be everywhere all the time. And so what we want to do here is make sure that we're teaching as many people as we can CPR so they can make a difference. Pictured here are a couple of the different training sites we've put together for other city departments and employees. And we hope to roll out this training to the public here in the near future. We actually received a call today from a local business that was asking about CPR training, so we're starting to work with them and get that rolled out. We've also been working hard to make sure we're taking care of our number one resources, our firefighters. Our peer fitness team is focused on providing a holistic approach to firefighter health and wellness through a number of different programs such as fitness, mental health awareness, injury prevention, and developing healthy eating habits. We've also been working very closely with our occupational medicine doctor to develop a program to make sure our firefighters are getting the right type of physicals. We've even teamed up with a local fitness center to provide in-body testing. And in-body testing, what it does, we use that as a measuring tool to measure body composition, BMI, visceral fat. And so that's been very helpful to determine how well our programs are working. What do we need to focus on? when it comes to health and wellness of our firefighting crews. Working closely with our inspection division, local developers, and realtors, our fire crews have completed over 14 different training sessions utilizing 7 different acquired structures throughout Ames before they're demolished. It was a great use before these buildings were torn down for our crews to get in there. It's a rare opportunity that we have that we can go in and do live, not fire training necessarily, but live hands-on training, especially when crews aren't familiar with the building, to get in there, drag hoses around, go through walls to simulate rapid intervention techniques or rescues. So that was a great opportunity, teaming up with our local partners to do that in the inspection division. We continue to work on officer development training, focusing on leadership, excellence through people, and first alarm strategy and tactics. And I'm happy to report that just last week we finished up fire inspector certification training for all 9 of our lieutenants. And so they have all gone through that process, which helps expand our company level inspection program to get out and get into more buildings. Next, moving on to our fire prevention and safety education program on pages 46 and 47. Next year, we're showing an increase in our contractual service, which is caused by 2 necessary updates. First is the National Fire Protection Association subscription. That's about a $1,500 subscription annually. So we try to not necessarily do that every year, but prepare for that to update it every so often. The second part of that is the adoption of the 2018 International Fire Code. We're currently in 2015 and we'll be adopting the 2018 codes early next year. Our new fire inspector has been with us now for a little over a year. And one of the changes we made to that position before the fire inspector started was we added fire investigation responsibility to that role. We wanted to make sure that we had one person in charge of overseeing fire investigations. That's really important. That's actually a multi-discipline jurisdiction program that we have teamed up with Ames PD, ISU Police, the Story County Sheriff's Office. That way we get coverage over the whole county, because if we have somebody that's running around town doing fires, they're not necessarily just focusing on Ames. They could be in other parts of the county. So that we've increased a little bit of our overtime budget to make sure that our fire inspector, Jason Zip, is available to see those fire investigations through, to meet with witnesses and also insurance companies when they come out. One of the areas where we saw a real need within this division to help our customers be successful was with crowd manager training. The fire code requires crowd managers to be present at all facilities and or events involving a gathering of more than 500 people. So crowd manager training is currently available. It's a $20 registration fee and takes about 2 hours to complete online. To help encourage crowd manager training for our public and emphasize its importance, we teamed up with the city manager's office. Actually, Tashik has helped us out greatly with that, teaming up with our fire inspector to develop our own crowd manager training. That'll be online. It'll be free to our citizens. And we feel like by offering it ourselves that we'll have a much better program and we'll have more buy-in for the different managers and owners and people running the different programs to take part of this to help increase patron safety. And we're also working hard to grow our community outreach efforts through a number of different avenues. One of our favorite events is by teaming up with Iowa State Environmental Health and Safety for Campus Fire Safety Day. This occurs in September. Here you can see that we're teaching ISU students, professors, anybody that'll come over and be willing to pick up a fire extinguisher. We're happy to show them a lifelong skill of how to use a fire extinguisher. I know it sounds pretty simple, but until you actually do one, it's a totally different story. I remember we had a pretty hefty football player from ISU that came over to do the fire extinguishers and could not physically pull the pin out of the fire extinguisher. Where it's a real simple technique. You pretend like you're starting a car, you twist it, and that'll break that safety tie off there. So simple techniques that are lifelong, you won't forget that. Just like we haven't forgot the gentleman who couldn't pull the pin out of there. So those are important things that we want to keep passing on to ISU and to other businesses in town, which is a program we offer through our fire extinguisher program.
I need to get some training. I have the fire extinguisher under here, and I don't know if I
yes,
know how to use it.
Yes, we'll have to make sure we get you on the list.
Not now.
Sticking with fire prevention and safety education, still on 46 and 47. We've teamed up with local Christmas tree providers to place informational safety tags on how to properly care for a live Christmas tree to prevent it from becoming a fire hazard. You've probably seen this on our Facebook page. This is a great program. We go out, take as many trees as we can so that when somebody comes out and purchases it, they have that tag with them, and we'll lessen the opportunity for that tree to dry out, and just some simple techniques to how to take care of that tree to prevent it from becoming a hazard. Another fun event was at Cape Mitchell School. We teamed up with them on their STEM night, where we were able to show parents and teachers the importance of closing your bedroom door at night. We actually had a little handmade dollhouse that we used, and we'd fill it with smoke, and we could demonstrate how smoke would move from areas of high pressure to areas of low pressure. And if you close the door, how the smoke would just pass over that door so that it gave you more time to get out of the house if you needed to. A great tool, and it was a great opportunity for us to tie in high pressure, low pressure, and why smoke moves the way it moves in a house with the STEM event that they had going on at Cape Mitchell. Next, I'd like to introduce you to our building official, Sarah Van Meter, and she's going to cover the next couple of pages.
Good evening. Definitely not as exciting as all those. So on the building side, we're looking at just a 2.8% increase overall budget. Most of that comes from, as Rich was alluding to, the International Fire Code. The 2018 code set is out. So they'll adopt the fire code on their side, and then we will potentially look at adopting the building codes on our side. And so that's it's a decent cost to equip the office, all of the inspectors, our boards, and everybody that needs code books with them. So we're looking into that. We will be going forward for sure with the 2018 mechanical code and uniform plumbing code, because the state is adopting them this spring and we're required to follow suit with them. So those for sure we will do. We're not looking at any permit fee increases or rental fee increases. You might recall last year we did increase rental fees based on the addition of the rental inspector. And we've now got that person in place, and he's out doing inspections and loving his job. So we're hoping with that, we've been able to stay on top of the rental inspections. We have just under 15,000 units now. So with those 3 inspectors, we're able to stay on top of that and also do a little more of the public outreach that we're hoping to use to educate. Every August, we have a new set of students in town, and it's helpful to be able to get out and educate them. So we're actually looking at a sort of a blitz or something this fall where we go knock on doors when people move in and, tell them don't leave your couches outside, don't have fires so close to the house, all the issues we see throughout the year. So we'll work with the police department, Iowa State, and the firefighters to knock on doors and talk to people. As I said, the 2018 code adoption's coming up. Last winter, we completed the BSEGS rating. We received a 4. It's a scale of 1 to 10, and 1 is the best. It's a little bit backwards. So we did pretty good, but basically it's through the insurance rating company. They determined if our building codes, if we're adopting the most up to date, how well trained our staff is. Essentially, a 1 would say that we've done everything we can to protect all of our buildings. We have the best codes. We have very high trained staff. And that's supposed to influence the local insurance rates. So the higher the rating, the lower insurance rates are supposed to be. I don't know if it actually works out that way, but that's the idea. So we're a 4. One of the things that we get hit with is, well, we're currently, that's one reason we want to upgrade to the 2018 codes, so we can maintain our score there. We're currently on the 2015. So when we did this, the 2018s weren't out yet. We didn't lose points for that. But there are some things that we just probably aren't ever going to get the points for, and that's okay. So we're still at a 4. That's good. We also have the Citizen Self-Service Portal coming up. That was, you might remember, a couple years ago now. I don't remember how many. We implemented a new software program, permitting software. We've been live with that for 2 years, 2 years now. And we're just getting to the point where we're comfortable enough with it that we can roll it out to the public and they can start pulling permits and requesting inspections through it. So a couple more tweaks, and I think we'll be ready early this spring to roll out that program. We're like doing the community outreach, as I explained with the Blitz. We like getting out and talking to people. So we're trying to attend more events. We're doing more stuff with the community. We've talked with realtors. They're one of our biggest assets in spreading information about purchasing properties, rental properties, those kinds of things. So we talk with them at their monthly meetings often. We've talked with other local groups. We plan to be at the Home and Garden Show on February 16th and 17th, if you want to go. We're going to do a little presentation there, just the basics of building codes and permitting and when you do and don't. So if people are there planning a spring or summer project, we'll be there to help answer their questions. So those are the things we really enjoy. We've found it to be really beneficial if our customers know that we're on their team. We want their project to succeed, and we're there to answer questions, not just tell them no. So back over to Rich.
Sarah, I've got two questions from page 49. On the number of building permits issued, we touched base briefly on that before. This 2018-19 adjusted of 650 and then the estimated 625, that's an important data point for us as a council. If we were to look back at a 10-year average, where is this in terms of a trend?
So I believe we did a 5-year average for that number. So that's based on, that 625 is based on the last 5 years of permitting. So it's pretty well in the average, I would say. We do go up and down quite a bit,
right.
But we average out over the course of the 5 years pretty well. And that is, just keep in mind, that is just building permits. That does not include any of the trade permits.
Right.
So that might be, it may be a bit misleading because the number of inspections you see actually is all inspections.
So Chris, on the theme of quizzing council, remind me, you looked at Ankeny's permits.
Oh, it's not apples to apples.
Okay.
The data that we looked at.
Okay. Then the other question I had on the number of neighborhood concerns. So the 16-17 actual was 227. Pretty significant jump there. Could you walk us through that?
Yeah, so the neighborhood concerns, that matches up when we started doing a little bit more proactive enforcement. So there are things that we're seeing as we're driving through areas. Also, I believe it corresponds to 17-18. Oh, that would have been, sorry, I'm thinking back when we had a gap where we didn't have anyone in that position. And so they dropped a little bit, but mostly I think that's the proactive enforcement. So the 2018, that one jumps up quite a bit. That includes all of the proactive enforcement that you've directed us to do over the last year. That was part of the rental discussions, was more proactive and outreach. So the 500 is more.
So would you anticipate this leveling out as we maintain that approach of being more proactive?
Yes, I would anticipate, as long as we can stay proactive and educate people, the number should go down. Okay. The number of complaints we receive. Now, keep in mind, this is the whole city, so we don't have the ability to be proactive citywide. We're going to concentrate on certain high volume neighborhoods. So the number, it'll go down, but it won't, I don't think it will be cut in half.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate you guys being here and allowing us to share what we have planned for next year. Any questions that we can answer, or any tips on how to use a fire extinguisher, perhaps?
Yeah.
I'll be calling you.
Thank you so much.
I just appreciate the fact that on page 49, the last bullet says, achieving the goal of being a resource for customers instead of being viewed as an enforcement branch of a local government entity. And I just think that just shows great customer service and all you guys do at the fire department. I'm just impressed by all the contact. I just think it's a valuable service to really build that, that trust. And can you share, I think I know the answer to this question, but I want you to share. How many hours a year does a fireman go through?
For training?
Yeah, per year.
Oh boy, it varies. We're talking hundreds of hours worth of training.
Yeah, one of your captains at Station 3 out there by told me that was 800 hours a year that they're doing training. That just blew me away. That's almost half the time is just in training alone because of all the complexities of fire and all the other things that go on. So it's just, I think we just assume that you guys are, eating donuts and drinking coffee all the time,
I'm not assuming
They
that.
do that too.
Well, I mean, I just think that it's just an important data point for people to understand that how dangerous the fires are, not just because they're hot, but the chemicals, the smoke, all the different stuff. And we just take for granted what you guys provide, and just the attitudes of being customer service and trying to help, people out. So thank you for what you do. I know you guys put your lives on your line, when you go out there, and Sarah, just the attitude of being customer focused. I think it's great. I think this to really be positive versus being, we're going to slap your hand all the time. So anyway.
Thank you, Mayor. We appreciate that. Good.
Thanks for coming. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Speaking of enforcement,
Good evening.
Good evening.
Pleasure to be here and have a chance to catch you up on the police department. Bit of a challenge to follow these other presenters, exciting things they're bringing, so I'm a little bit intimidated here. Bear with me. I'd like to introduce some of the folks who really get the work done in the police department, and I'll just ask them to stand briefly behind me. Commander Jeff Huff is Patrol Division Commander currently. Jason Tuttle, Investigations Commander. Doug Houghton, his title is Support Services Manager, but really it's complicated projects person. So if you see Doug, we're all in trouble. And then Ron Edwards, who just doing an outstanding job out at the animal shelter, and I'll highlight some of the changes out there in the future. We are very fortunate to have an experienced team with this level of expertise and capacity. And as I look around the state, I really feel fortunate to have this level of talent. I want to talk to you briefly about the next level of that operation as well. I wouldn't be doing the Department of Justice if I didn't acknowledge our lieutenants who really supervise each shift. They are the 24-hour-a-day people who make our business work, and make no mistake, it's a tough business we're in. We're there when there's conflict. We're there when people are unhappy, and we're trying to make the best of it. So Lieutenant Dan Walther, Lieutenant Heath Ropp, and Lieutenant Tom Shelton have all put some years into their lieutenant rank. They're strong leaders on their shift. They're sensitive to the challenges in the community. They're engaged in this community as we grow and change in Ames. And I just think we owe this group and these lieutenants a note of recognition for the hard work that they do every day. So thank you for letting me make that point with you. Jumping right in with police administration and records, the very top issue for us is recruiting new talent into the police department. And I have to tell you, recruiting police officers across the country is getting more difficult, but the quality of life and the environment we have here has allowed us to hold our own. I think the talent we're able to bring on board will continue to meet your expectations and continue to respond to the community. The numbers are dropping, but that core group of people that we're interested in bringing to Ames and having provide the kind of service our citizens want seem to be staying with us. Once we have them, we ask you to help us invest in their training, and we invest a lot in the training of our officers. There are department-wide events, things like fair and impartial policing, implicit bias training, our mental health outreach training, and then there are all the specialty trainings in the department that help people enrich their job experience, grow in their careers, stay committed to aims, and stay committed to the kind of service that we provide. The end result of that, I think, is good quality service to the community. And then the area that's growing in our department is this investment in peer support and wellness. Across the profession, we're recognizing that the stresses of policing take a toll on the people who do the work every day. And we've been investing grant money and strengthening our partnerships in support of our people. And I think the end result of that for you is you're less likely to have a tired, burned out, cynical person responding to your call. Our officers are staying happy, they're staying healthy, they're growing, and we're helping them to the best of our ability stay fresh as they do this difficult work. Relationship building and problem solving are at the heart of our police services. For our budget presentation here, you'll see that we've combined investigations and patrol that will maybe move us along a little more quickly. But I'm using the pictures to illustrate the points as much as my words. So relationship building and problem solving as those core functions we're committed to. You'll see that in the pictures that are displayed on these slides as we work through this. You have the budget numbers and the quantitative measures in front of you, but I think the pictures help bring it to life for you a little bit. Relationships with young people are critically important. The attitudes toward law enforcement can be formed at a very early age and then will stay with people for a long, long time. So we are particularly sensitive to investing in those relationships with young people. This budget includes a second school resource officer. In general, as we work with the school, that means we'll be able to have a full-time presence at the high school and a full-time presence at the middle school. This is something we've been discussing with school officials and the school administration for a number of years. And while this helps the school, I think it's very important to emphasize how important this is for the rest of the community. Young people can cause a lot of trouble. And the quicker we get involved in some of those problems, the quicker we get involved in some of those conflicts, the less likely they are to turn serious, the less likely they are to turn dangerous, and the less likely we are to have a bad outcome for that young person, the families, and the people they deal with. So we're all sensitive to the hazards associated with weapons in schools and some of the conflicts that occur. And so the school district is a critical customer for us. I'm really, I can't tell you how pleased I am that they've come forward and indicated their interest in strengthening this partnership. It's good for our community. It's good for young people.
So Chuck, what's driving this? Why are there situations there now that weren't there 5 years ago that are prompting this request today?
Sure. The hazards associated with the school have increased. You can look across the country and see that there are more weapons in schools. There are more serious assaults. There are more drugs and alcohol in schools. And in fact, it used to be that school resource officers were concentrated in the high school and occasionally went to the middle school. In today's world, we know that we have to have a presence in the middle school because of the dynamics there. But we're increasingly being called to situations involving elementary school students. So the lives of some students are very unstable, and they bring that instability to school. Even for any student, the growth of social media has left them without a safe haven. They can be in your home, they can be in the library, they can be at a friend's house, and the conflict, the bullying, the juvenile intimidation travels with them every place they go.
So I understand that there may be some national trends, but with Ames in particular, the schools felt like things have progressed enough that it warrants having this additional officer.
Yes, absolutely.
And as you're thinking, the way you've described this has been primarily of concerns within the school, but is there also an outward-facing concern of a threat coming from the outside in, that having that additional police officer is providing some extra protection? Is that part of the calculus or not?
We don't really provide a security service. Obviously, the officer will respond to an outside threat that comes into the school, and if we have an officer assigned to each school, we are more available to support that. But when we have in our current situation, that officer may be in the middle school, maybe in the high school, maybe in a parent's home. We had 2 overdose calls the officer was dealing with the other day and wasn't in either school for much of the day. So in our current situation, we don't really provide that predictable presence that those principals are looking for. And moving to a second school resource officer, I think will strengthen that relationship in both of those institutions considerably.
I think the public appreciates the greater attention to security for their students with the shootings that have gone on in the schools. There was an article in the Journal within the last week about efforts that schools have undertaken to improve their security. My understanding is your police officers have consulted with the schools as they've done the redesigns of the elementary schools. They're much safer than they were 10 years ago. So we appreciate the thought there. And I assume when we're building a new high school, you'll be involved in consultation there to how to keep our students and teachers and staff safe. So
yes, actively involved with high school.
Thanks for letting me walk you through that.
I know, I appreciate your support. This is important for the community. And it helps all of us when we can intervene early in the trajectory of some of those juvenile incidents.
Thank you.
Let's move into a quick look at some of the numbers. This slide shows some of our property crime data. The most noteworthy item here is the growth in financial crimes. So that green line on the bottom creeping up. Most of that is fraud. And most of the fraud that we're dealing with comes from the online world. It's been a boon to the fraudsters of the world. They are creative. So I just picked one out of the pile. I thought you might like this one. It's a message from the CEO saying, send all your tax records to this other entity for an audit. And it's pretty believable. Looks authentic. And when the boss says do it, at least in City Hall, we do it. So
Don't do it.
and if he says don't do it, we don't do it.
Is that from you, Steve?
Yeah.
Yeah, it happened to me.
This is the new world we're living in, all right? And they are creative, energetic, and good at this. So every day we see new and creative efforts at this. So unfortunately, this is a growth business for us. Personal crimes, assaults, the blue line, sex assaults, the red line, and domestic violence, the green line. Sex assaults, increasing in reports. The increase in willingness to report is a good thing. Naturally, we'd like the incidence of the crime to go down, but it's still a crime that is largely unreported. So we regard any increase in reporting as a positive message from the community about their willingness to engage law enforcement and support resources and try to address the problem. So hopefully we'll continue to nurture that environment and get people to come forward. Domestic violence is a problem in our community that doesn't get a lot of attention. Very difficult call for the officers. And again, we're seeing an increase. Hopefully it's an increase in reporting and a willingness to take advantage of resources, but important work to be done. And then the general assaults are up, and I really can't tell you if that's reporting or if that's somehow an increase in the assaults that we see. There's a lot of fluctuation in that. One of the trends I've mentioned to you before, but I thought I'd revisit, is that our most serious crimes increasingly are leading us to other communities. The Central Iowa Corridor is apparently a pretty mobile environment. People will live in Ankeny, they'll visit Fort Dodge, they'll come to Ames, they'll go to Des Moines. And wherever you live, you sometimes go someplace else to commit your crime. And so we've had to really strengthen our relationships with Central Iowa agencies. And in fact, as we've done more analysis, we've really discovered we have ties to the part of the state that are a little bit surprising. So it's a new world. It's a growth area in policing. It's one we have to adapt to, get better at, build relationships, and try to stay ahead of these kinds of trends. One of the things we're doing close to home is expanding, using some grant money, I should point out, to expand our data system to include Huxley, Nevada, and Story City Police Department. They'll now be adding their police records into our university, city, county shared data system. So good government, we all share a scarce resource, and also allows some types of collaboration between police agencies in the region. And we use grant money to do it. Neighborhood quality of life, this is always a very important slide in our community, and I think we all like to see that blue line going down, those noise complaints going down. The little bump there last year and this year are largely fireworks calls. Last year we had about 145 fireworks calls. And as you know, these are difficult to enforce. They're frustrating for the caller. They're frustrating for the officer trying to investigate it. And so we do the best we can with fireworks calls when they come in. But we also know there are a lot of citizens out there who don't call us. They just kind of suffer through and hope it'll taper off. Other than the fireworks calls, those noise complaints continue to show a pretty nice downward trend, even as we have lots of multi-family housing. Those kind of complaints continue to decline. Is probably really a tribute to our landlords and our property managers who work hard to resolve those problems quickly. Trespass notices, pretty flat, and then nuisance parties also staying pretty flat. So no real big trends there for you to.
That blue line is calls. Are the red and green lines calls or infractions? Like
the nuisance party would be nuisance party citations. So we get called to a lot of parties, but
that's the number.
Yeah, these are the ones that are serious enough that we have to cite them.
And same with the trespass, I assume.
With trespass, those are trespass orders that we've issued.
Ah, I see.
So if somebody causes enough of a problem at a business or in an apartment complex,
I see. Yep.
The manager of that property says, I want them notified that they're not to be on this property. That's a tool that they and we use as a problem-solving device.
Okay, thanks.
So mental emotional health calls, they've been an area of concern in many of our recent budget presentations. And tonight I finally have some good news. While we continue to get a lot of mental health calls, we have a growing community recognition of the importance of these issues. And when a call comes in, we now have additional entities working in the crisis arena. And I want to mention the most significant of these. The mobile crisis response team is now taking those crisis calls, generally responding in about 45 minutes. And they're taking calls that we used to have to take in the police department. So if there's not somebody at risk, if there's not a weapon involved, if somebody's not actively a threat, we can hand that off to mobile crisis. They go, and in most cases, people are very happy that these folks show up and provide that service, and it gets the police out of that relationship. The assertive community treatment team is trying to provide psychiatric response. In many cases, that's a diagnosis or maintenance of a diagnosis and maintenance of treatment for some of the mental health clients. And that group too is taking some of the most serious chronic situations, engaging a team to respond to the needs of those folks, and preventing the series of crisis calls that we had to deal with in past years. So I really want to trumpet the success of these two groups in stepping into that difficult arena and responding to these mental health calls. The other group I want to give credit to is the Transitional Living Program at Mary Greeley. We know that that was a niche that caused a lot of people problems. They're dismissed from the hospital, no real transition back to free living in the community. And the Transitional Living Program is a fabulous bridge between that acute care and the rest of the community. And I just couldn't be more pleased that we're seeing this kind of professional work being done in that crisis arena. They're better at it than we are. So it's just really refreshing to have that kind of thing happening.
How's that paid for, Chief? The mobile crisis and assertive.
A lot of that's regional funds. So the state's organizing in these mental health regions, and so that state money is coming back into those services. Yeah. Transitional Living, I think, also has some county money invested in it. So while I'm delivering good news, I guess maybe congratulations are in order for reducing the frequency and cost of traffic collisions. 2016 was a difficult year for all of us who drive. 17 and 18 apparently are better. The numbers you see up there represent the police officer's estimate of damage to the collisions that we record. So the decline in our estimated damage represents really some pretty substantial financial improvements for the community. These are police officer estimates, so they're wrong.
Does this count that pileup?
The actual damage is likely to be higher than that. When you go to the body shop, they'll give you a real number. And then there are medical costs on top of this. And so Public Works and Damien and you all work hard on transportation planning and invest a lot of time and energy in these issues. I just want you to know how important it is. It pays off in the budgets of those of us who live and drive and buy auto insurance in this community. So we all need to keep working on this.
Do those figures include that pileup on I-35 in the snowstorm? No. Just curious. That's really outside of
ours. So.
Right, outside the city, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
I just didn't know if it was anything we responded to or if that's within city limits. Huh?
Yeah, I'd rather not have that little circle on our next slide where we
yeah, right.
100-car pile up.
Yeah, exactly. The graph is off the chart.
$3 million bump.
Yeah, exactly. Couldn't possibly be.
But honestly, it's a good point because it's engineering, education, and enforcement that we try to use to prevent those sorts of things. And we need to worry about the next one.
Yeah.
Or there will be a $3 million bump on one of these. So we're hoping our partners in DOT are looking ahead and doing their homework on these issues. It seems important for me to remind you that drugs are just a part of so much of the difficulty that we encounter in our community. Impaired driving, the complicated family relationships, and the violent calls that we get called to. In so many of these, drugs and alcohol are mixed into that event in some way. Cause, effect, symptom, all of the above, but they permeate much of the work and much of the difficult work that we have to do with people. And so the community recognizes this and usually rates our drug enforcement efforts pretty high in the citizen satisfaction survey. I just wanted to give you a sense of this with some slides. Left-hand side is some methamphetamine that we've seized locally. On the right-hand side, if you look at that, that's fairly high-grade marijuana shipped to Ames in these hermetically sealed boxes using a commercial shipping service. And that little pile of dope is worth a lot of money. So, speaking of money, here's a kind of money that does accumulate and change hands associated with this. And so, across the country, we're struggling with this. As other states legalize marijuana, we're feeling the effects. We're seeing some of those products here. As I talk to my colleagues in those other states, the revenue is generally collected at the state level. And depending what state you're in, sometimes the localities get some assistance, but in all cases, the local community is left with the regulatory challenges. The smell, the zoning and siting locations, the impaired driving, the need to keep it out of schools. And so if and when Iowa chooses to approach this issue differently or expand our role, I would anticipate that we'll have some local challenges that we need to prepare ourselves for. And there are lots of other states learning those lessons and interested in communicating with us. Just recently, we've seen an uptick in hallucinogenic drugs in this community, and it's typical. We get these spurts. On the left-hand picture is a second-story window. The other night, we had a young man jump through that window, and on the right is where he landed. And he was hallucinating under the influence of this drug. And we've seen a number of these cases just in the last couple of weeks. So it just springs up on us, and in this case, very dangerous. Heroin. On the left-hand side is some heroin we've seized locally, and on the right, some paraphernalia. A year ago, we started carrying Narcan. We've had 9 Narcan deployments in the last year. Jeff's just going to circulate Narcan in case you haven't seen it, just so you get all the hands on. It's been great. It's magic. It doesn't solve the problem, but it keeps the person alive long enough that we can try to make that connection to treatment for them. And make no mistake, it's here in this community, and it's something our families and friends are struggling with, sometimes quite privately. And we need to stay tuned to this.
So remind me, there was an issue for a while whether the fire department was going to carry Narcan. Has that been resolved now?
I
believe it has.
They've gone. I believe they've overcome that, are in the process of instituting policy and preparing to carry it.
Okay, so that's coming.
It's coming.
Okay.
Yes.
Chuck, could you just give just a quick sentence about the town hall that was held here, I don't know, it was about a year ago, and just the level of community engagement with that?
Yes, for some amazing. You might recall, we held a town hall meeting as a way of trying to just generate some discussion, but also help us understand what the community was feeling. And we filled this room. We opened the back chamber and filled the room. And I actually had to stand back in the corner. There were so many people here. And they came with questions, but they came with personal experiences involving family and friends and children, and some positive perspectives, but a real sense that our community, even a year ago, was struggling with this issue. And that group has continued to meet. We've had subsequent town hall meetings and some other settings. Our work is far from done. But I think access to treatment and access to providers, a willingness to make referrals, and supportive resources for families have to all be on our community-wide agenda.
I have never seen so many people in these chambers as that event. And it's naive to think that these things aren't coming our way. But I was shocked at the level of community engagement. Families, people I'd never seen before, they were concerned. There were scared people that were there. And I want to commend your department for the proactive approach to this situation. So thanks for the whole opioid preparation, I think, has been outstanding here.
Yeah, lots of work to do. So let me move to communications. The communications world is changing. The big issue here will be a radio system. We hope to bring you a recommendation out of the RFP process later this spring. Strong partnership with other government entities across the county, and a chance to move to a system that will support our first responders, support our community, and get our folks where they need to be. So we're excited about a chance to move. The other point I just wanted to make quickly on this slide, we can lose sight of the non-emergency calls that come into the police department because we always focus on those EMD calls and those 911 calls, but our dispatchers answer over 100,000 non-emergency calls every year. Those can be parking calls, they can be barking dogs, they can be how do I report a street light out, but they can also be questions about access for opioid treatment. They can be the beginning of a conversation that leads to a trafficking investigation. And so every one of those 100,000 calls requires personal attention, sensitivity, and that probing kinds of conversational awareness that our dispatchers do. And so we talk a lot about consolidating things and moving them around. And we, with today's technology, we can do great things with 911. But our dispatchers are in there every day handling an enormous number of calls from the community and trying to answer all kinds of questions for the citizens who ring them up for all kinds of reasons. Forfeiture and grants. I think you know most of this quickly. Just want to reinforce the fact that our forfeitures go through a court process, so there's judicial scrutiny over any forfeiture that we process. Most of those have to do with the proceeds of drug dealing and drug sales. We use the forfeited funds generally for the operating cost of the drug task force. And if there's excess, sometimes we purchase unanticipated equipment that we might need in a given year. It's not a large amount of money, but we do think there's value in taking the profit out of the drug business for people. And then our grant support, I think those are all pretty familiar to you. You see those coming across the council agenda. So the animal shelter, lots of exciting things going on at the shelter. The last couple of years, Ron's worked hard with the staff to increase transparency. You can go to the shelter and you can look at animals in, animals out, animals type, how long they stay. The transparency of the shelter operation has truly been enhanced by his efforts, gone back even to an era when Ron wasn't here to get the data posted and accessible to the public. It's important that the public understand what we do and trust what we do, good or bad, in the shelter. And so kudos to Ron and his staff for that. The second theme here is adoptability, working hard to make sure that the animals that come through the shelter are adoptable, that they're healthy, that they're stabilized, and that they're suitable for adoption. And frankly, it required us to do some new things in terms of animal care and to try to invest in some new kinds of cages and environments. And then overall, a commitment to quality operations, I think, captures the spirit and commitment of the staff in that arena. We're trying to be a top shelf operation. We're trying to make a real commitment to being a no-kill shelter and deliver what the citizens expect of the animal shelter for the city of Ames. So hard work, kudos to Ron under some difficult circumstances. The facility is a challenge right now. So we've had to take down the ceiling insulation. The mice have been evicted now. It was no small undertaking to get them out, but they're out. And we have, while we're replacing the ceiling tile and doing some insulation there, we're also bringing on board a consultant to look at that facility, try to determine whether it can function in today's world up to today's standards. And if it can't, help us and help you with some guidance about what the future might look like for the shelter. So important work. Meanwhile, we're trying to do the best we can out there, keep it presentable, keep it safe, and buy some time to study this question. Our budget also includes a proposal to increase the adoption fees. The percentage-wise, these are pretty substantial increases. We'd like to see cats go to $60. The market among shelters in Iowa is 50 to 86. So even with our increase, we're just getting into kind of the typical market range. And you can see dogs and rabbits. Rabbits, who knew? We just have a lot of rabbits coming through the shelter. But we just think these numbers have lagged, and it's time to move closer to those market rates and try to recapture some of the costs and try to provide the right balance with our adopters so they take some sense of responsibility when they make these adoptions. To illustrate some of our thinking behind this, Ron put together the typical costs of a dog adoption if we were to have one of our vets do all of this work. So our out-of-pocket cost for a typical dog is going to be $113. Our adoption fee isn't there yet, in part because we think the vet tech that we've put on board will reduce the cost of providing some of these services. But we need a little time to study that, and we may be back to you in future years kind of fine-tuning the cost recovery and market influence of the adoption fee. But in the meantime, we know we have some catch-up to do, so that's a part of our budget proposal. The footnote here is that we're trying to send these animals out of the shelter healthy. So we're not hoping that the adopting party will take them to the vet. We're making sure that this basic work is done and they're going out of the shelter healthy. Wildlife conflict, you all know about this. I've talked to you before. I just thought you'd enjoy the picture. It's not often we catch a deer. If we could do this often, we wouldn't have our urban deer problem. But it illustrates as much as we like the wildlife in this environment. There are times where they get too close. There are times where they get hurt. There are times where that conflict spins up, and Ron and his staff have to step into this and try to make the best of it. So it's a challenge sometimes because coyotes, beaver, deer do generate some significant conflict for us. Let's go to parking. A big change for us is the establishment of the parking enforcement supervisor position. You know, Sherry came on board last year, manages our CSOs, responds to complaints and concerns, coordinates our enforcement with outside entities and with Public Works, and really pleased to have somebody in that role and providing that level of responsiveness and service to all of those special situations that people call in with their parking concerns. I had mentioned to you earlier that at some point, maybe this summer, we'll be updating our hardware and software, which will allow for additional flexibility in how we respond to issues. Once this equipment's on board, we can let you know in case you choose to further explore a warning citation for first offense on meters. At one point, there was some interest in that. So by summer, I think we'll be deploying some of that equipment. We're anxious to get some feedback from the parking consultant as part of this downtown study. It really seems like we're caught between our small town past and our aspirations to be a more vibrant, growing regional center of commerce. We're caught in between. And so it's a challenging time for us, and parking a challenging time for you, and we just have to work our way through that as a community. So hope the consultant can help us.
Do we have any sort of data about how what the utilization is for Park Mobile?
I don't have that information handy. For us, it's been relatively easy to use and understand. Damien would be a better one to speak to sort of how that scaled up quickly and then seems to have plateaued, I think. But,
all right, thank you.
Off the top of my head, I can't give you a good explanation. So Vanessa kind of gave you a quiz. I'm not going to do that. I'm not even going to show the video. But if you haven't seen this, I'm going to encourage you when you have a moment to look at this video. It's designed for our recruits. So when we're out recruiting for police officers, we put together a video that tries to describe the climate, the culture, the expectations of the police department. And while it targets potential police officers, it also might give you an insight into what it's like to work in the police department, what we expect of people, and what's important in the world of those folks who do this work every day. So on your own time. If you get a chance, take a look at that.
Is that on our YouTube channel or where?
YouTube. Yep. Just go to YouTube, Ames Police Department, and the title of it is A Wonderful Place to Work. Very objective.
Questions for Chief?
So do you have questions?
Yeah.
Just to comment on the number of volunteers, Ron, that you're utilizing at the shelter. It's amazing. And we've seen this with a library, with a hospital. These are parts of our city that really couldn't function without a huge army of volunteers. So we appreciate the opportunities that people have in their service.
I asked the police fire department how many hours a year do you guys they do training? How many hours a year? You do a lot of training also, do you not? I mean, so it's just to gain an appreciation for the fact it's not just all being out writing parking tickets, so to speak.
Yeah, I'm going to parrot the police chief's answer. It's complicated. There's core training that everybody goes through. There are minimum qualifications for annual qualifications for all of those core skills. So all of the equipment we carry, firearms, taser, defensive tactics, those are all mandatory training, generally in 2 to 4 hour blocks. So that group of training is probably going to be 20 to 30 hours minimum for everybody. We generally do some mandatory training twice a year. I mentioned implicit bias, fair and impartial policing. We're in we just finished a 4-hour mental health block in December. Right now, in fact, the last couple of days, our officers are going through procedural justice training, and it's a really important foundation for the fairness and equity of what we do. And it's coming at a good time for us. And then on top of that, you have all the specialty schools that we send people to. So you may have a detective who does another 40, 60, 80 hours on top of that core requirement. You may have a patrol officer who does 10 or 12 hours on top of that core requirement. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Goes on and on is kind of the point. So we train more than most departments. In part because I think this community expects us to be well-trained and to be competent and to have those specialty skills.
And to the radio system, is there a timeline in terms of when that might be rolled out? I mean, I've gone to some of these EMS meetings and in talking last Friday, it's like it's all been, the budget includes everything to do the funding for what we need to do. And we're upping the ante because of some of the backbone that we're helping to pay for, which is certainly, meritorious. But is that like a year from now that we'll start seeing that?
I think we're looking at a recommendation coming from that purchasing group sometime in March.
Okay.
And then if all of the participating entities agree, we would sign that contract and move forward with a sense of urgency. The best guess right now is probably a year of build out and implementation. It may be possible to accelerate that. So one part of the discussions underway is whether there is it's a cost benefit analysis of whether it's worth investing a little more to get that moving more quickly and get us off the current system. We are looking at some, we believe, some potential fee increases on the current system that provide an incentive for us to move.
Mm. And can you also, I'm sure it mentions the council, but it's interesting that we're talking about working regionally, being a county, and that they're going to be purchasing some extra radios to put in a pool, which I thought was really outstanding, because if you have a issue, maybe you can just talk about that just for a second, how many radios that is. I mean, the radios they're like $5-6 grand a pop. So, I mean, we're talking about some significant investment, but again, what a great way to try and help Cambridge or other small communities that may need radios if you have a tornado go through, for sake of discussion. Can you kind of talk about that in terms of how we're going to work together?
I suspect overall the number of radios being carried across the county will decline, in part because of the expense. And in part because there are cell phone connections to the system that may serve the needs of people who currently carry radios. So the total number of radios may decline. That means in a major disaster where we're bringing other people into a communications network and we don't have a functioning cell phone tower, and we're relying on these public safety systems, we may need more radios than we have. And so there's been this regional discussion of whether a pool of radios could serve that purpose. And that way Ames wouldn't have to have a stockpile and ISU wouldn't have to have a stockpile, and we could have this resource as a shared backup, and potentially even share that depending on our relationship with the vendor and other entities. Could we share that even beyond just Story County? So be prepared, but manage the costs of that expensive equipment.
Yeah, that's great.
Chuck, do you have any quick impressions of the body cams or the video cams in Campus Town that you could share with us? So they
yes, the video cams in Campus Town, we've had to rebid because of the impact of the construction. And I think it's a minor change, but IT is working through that. So we haven't lost sight of it. It's just a long journey. But they are on track. the body cams are a blessing in the fact that they capture evidence, they capture interactions that otherwise would have been missed. But they are a curse because you have cables going everywhere. And it's one more thing the officer has to thread into their uniform, and it's another thing they have to, we're still learning that you have to create this habit of turning them on. So some of our officers pick that up instantly, and some of us are a little slower to learn that, right? So we're focused on the caller, we're focused on the situation, and we got to train that brainstem to click the camera on as part of that response. But all in all, I think the officers have embraced this and are, doing their best to make it work like it's intended. And it's captured some amazing things. So I've shared with some of you that one of the very first Narcan deployments, or the first Narcan deployment that an officer captured on his body cam happened to be the first time he wore that body cam. And you can see that person come to life right before your very eyes on that body camera. Now, it's not really evidence of crime or anything, but underscores the impact of that life-saving measure in a way that reading his report could never do. I read the report and then I watched the body cam and I went, oh, wow. So,
Any questions for Chief? I appreciate also the outreach you guys do, and from the mayor's bike ride to just what I've seen going around the community and the school. Can't say enough good things about the SRO. Been out to the high school a couple times with the mayor's youth committee. People just, they're just Officer Schieffer. It's Schieffer, right? Yeah.
Yes.
He's just like, he's a magnet for these kids. It's just outstanding. But I can't go into details, but I just share that a few weeks ago, had something come up that I needed some immediate help. Went down and talked to Chief, and Commander Huff was there. I'll tell you what, about 5 minutes, we had something going, and Officer Schieffer came out, and he gave up about, I think, 2 hours of his afternoon to help in a situation that had to do with a juvenile. And I just can't tell you how moving that was, but how valuable it was and how it de-escalated what could have been a really bad situation. And he knew when to push and say, no, you can't do this. But anyway, I just think that, again, we underappreciate what you guys do and how hard you work to really help be on the front end versus on the back end. And so thanks to you guys do. You're also on the front lines, and you got a difficult job. So anyway, thank you very much. So, all right. Great job. Thank you guys.
Thank you.
All right. Nancy, I wanted to say too, is I read through Steve's report, and he just commented on how you did so much work to get this reorganized. For some reason, I wasn't clicking until finally. This is really nice, this report, in terms of just seeing whether it's a city mission or council goal, and just seeing that in parallel and having the metrics and stuff. It's really helpful just to kind of see how it relates. So it's just, thank you for doing that. It's just really, I love this idea of this issues and factors and accomplishments and in progress. Just gives us a snapshot. It's not just numbers that we just kind of, our eyes just glaze over. So anyway.
Great, thanks.
So anyway. All right. We have no disposition of communications to council tonight. So council comments, we'll start with David tonight.
Nothing for me. Thank you.
Nothing.
Nope.
Nothing for me.
No.
No.
All right. We are good. So I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
All right. We are adjourned. Thank you.
Two things.